I usually use only 3 colors when I'm painting. And then sometimes I add a little bit.
Primary, right?
Right, yep. So you can see, here's a palette. And so usually I would just use blue, yellow, and red. But sometimes I would mix in a little bit of green because I found that the grass in this book, I really wanted to be this bright green. And I never could get quite the right green by just mixing the blue and the yellow.
Just one more book, please.
Okay.
This is called The Icky Sticky Chameleon. It's a great book because it has this long, sticky rubber tongue on the cover. And you can stretch it out. You want to stretch it? And you can snap it back. Yeah, you want to give it a snap?
It's really sticky.
It's sticky and it's disgusting. It leaves this grease stain on any other book that it's next to.
Yeah.
So, not only that, but this book has a warning choking hazard label on it.
Yeah.
Which means it's also the most dangerous book I've ever illustrated.
November 15th, 2008. It surprises me that so many veteran illustrators are gravitating to the computer as the primary tool for their craft, and newcomers like Jeff Mack are committed to paint. I'd have thought the opposite would be true. Jeff showed us his work and told some great behind-the-scenes stories about his books. I'm Mark Blevis. On this edition of Just One More Book, Rockstars of Reading Part 11, Jeff Mack.
I use the computer to map out the book and decide what pages are going to go on which words. So this was originally one of the ideas for the last page of the book. This is a book about a puppy who is going around meeting all these different animals and wants to play with this boy. And so for this book, all I would do is scan these pictures into the computer and then just sort of place the words, try to make sure I have enough room, and I can, you know, use the computer to change things. Like I can, if I wanted to make the dog a little smaller, I could circle him, and then I could shrink him down a little bit, just like that, and I wouldn't have to redraw the entire picture. For this book, I had to redo it altogether. So we thought that, my editor and I talked about it, and we thought, well, they're all going to be playing at the end, all the animals, including the boy in the book. And we thought maybe a silhouette didn't give you enough information about it. So I redrew it and I added some of the details of some of the characters. And then I still felt like the interaction between the boy and the dog was just not quite strong enough. I needed them to be sort of closer. It needed to be a more intimate ending. So I redesigned it so we have this boy and the dog, and now the dog's jumping on the boy and licking his face. I think it's a much happier ending in a way. And I'll show you the paintings, and you can see it was really hard to change this because I was really happy with the way that the paintings came out for these last couple pages. And it's always hard to have to throw away something that you're really happy with.
Do you find that you have to throw away stuff a lot? Is it the norm as opposed to the exception?
Yeah, it is actually. I find that, you know, like for example, Boo Bunny, I drew this book 10 times from cover to cover before I figured out. And not only that, but I started exploring Photoshop a little bit when I was working on it. And I started trying out some different versions of these pictures because Photoshop is such a great tool. You can try out so many different options for each picture. And it's hard to make a decision, I think, you know, sometimes because they all look good to me. I try to paint in pretty thin coats of paint because I really like see how like the red in the barn right there kind of glows, you know, see how it's like really bright red right there? And a lot of that's because the white of the background of the paper is showing through. Painters a long time ago used to use that technique to try to get it seem like there's light coming out of the painting. I did that a lot for this too. And the background really has this just nice glowing kind of effect, right? And that's because there's the paint that I used is so thin that it lets the white show through. And then the black is so thick and heavy that it's just the opposite of that. So it makes it even a stronger illusion. This was the cover for Dog Wants to Play. and I just sent this in, and they were saying that they liked the grass in this, and I said it took a lot of work. Took a lot of work to get the grass to be just soft enough, but not so soft that you couldn't see the individual strokes of grass on there. So it takes a lot of layers of paint. I have to paint a little bit in there, and I'll paint with color, and then I'll go back and I'll paint with some more white, and then I'll paint some more color on top of the white, and I hope that that white shows through the paint, and then I'll go back and paint a little more. So it's always sort of like a back and forth process.
Mm-hmm.
You've done a lot of illustrations that take up the full sheet that
Yeah.
I guess bleed to the edge, which is very cool. But you've also done a series at random. They obviously flow in where it just felt right for you. Of these little, and it's
Just
really neat the way
spots.
they're spotty on the edge, the way they fade out. But that there are these little circular or oval illustrations in which the images actually jump out of the circle. Is there a reason that you do that, or just to mix it up?
Just to mix it up in this book. I designed this book a couple different ways. I designed it in one way, and I made a little book dummy of it, of all the different pages as double page spreads. And then I made a version of it where every page was its own picture from page to page. And then one version where they alternated. So you'd have a double page spread, and then you'd have two single images, and then a double page spread. And so I actually sent the two double page spread version to the publisher, and the editor there said, well, we like it, but we think that it might work better if you had every other page as a double page and every other on the opposite be single pages. So I said, oh, okay, I'll work on that, and I'll get back to you. But of course, I was ready to go because I had that version that they were asking for all ready to go. So I just sent them that version, and they liked it much better. So and it was a rare case where I was kind of one step ahead of them at that point. And in this case, it's like the story's like dog wants to play, and he meets an animal, like this cat, for example, and then the cat gets scared. So in this it says poor dog. And then when it comes over here and he scares the lamb and the lamb runs away, it says poor dog. And when the pig goes away, it's the same thing, poor dog. So every time it says poor dog, it's a spot. It's a spot image.
And look lonelier.
Yeah, I tried to sort of isolate the dog in a little circle. And then you asked about why they're breaking out of the picture frame. Originally, the drawings did not have them breaking out of the picture frame. They originally were all inside. And I think I was working on this one with the cat. And I got to that edge, and I really didn't like the way that the edge broke across his back. And I felt like I needed to show the cat's back. It just looked kind of cut off, if you can imagine that without...
Yeah, and the tree too.
Right. So after I painted his back in, I thought, the tree just doesn't look right now because he needs to be standing on something, and it doesn't look very realistic. And so I went back and I painted the tree in on top of that, and I just kind of found that the more I worked on it, the more I liked the pages where they broke out of the circle. I think it made them a lot more interesting looking. So Rub-a-Dub Sub kind of came out of that, and it's a story about a little boy in a submarine, and he goes underwater and he meets all these different animals, an octopus, and some things called dabs, which are like flounders. And it goes all the way to the bottom of the ocean. He goes down inside this little drain, and when he's in there, he meets this terrifying shark. And is that the scariest shark you've ever seen in your life? Not too scary. He's the cutest shark you've ever seen. No, thanks. Yeah, he's actually a pretty friendly looking shark. But this kid is scared, so he goes flying back past all these different animals that he meets on the way down. There he goes past the seal and the eel and the shrimp and the blowfish. And he goes all the way back up to the surface of the water, and he pops up in his bathtub. All right, so the whole thing was actually taking place in his imagination. I've also done these books about Bunnicula the Vampire Bunny with James Howe. I've done 6 of those. These are ready-to-read series.
You mean the one with the glowing bunny?
Yeah, well, his eyes kind of glow in the dark.
Mm.
He's a vampire bunny who sucks the juice out of vegetables.
I've seen that. Oh, he sucks the juice out of vegetables.
Yeah. I've illustrated 13 books, and I've written one. And this is the one that I've written. And this just came out just a couple weeks ago, actually. I had a couple different ideas for books about polar bears, and I'd written a couple of them. And I was going to meet with the editor of Roaring Brook, and his name is Neil Porter. And he's a really nice guy and a really great editor. Before we went to dinner, I had this idea for this book, and I thought it should be like a bedtime story, and that I would write it in rhyming verse, like a lullaby. And so I wrote it, and then I was planning on showing him this story after dinner. So we got to dinner, and we're all sitting around talking, and he says, "You know, I have this one pet peeve about children's book writers." He says, "I don't understand why so many writers feel like they need to write in rhyming text. You know, I feel like I like stories that don't rhyme. I don't know why so many people want to rhyme." He says, "I don't think I ever want to read another rhyming story again in my life, you know." And he says, "Wait a minute, I take that back. You know, I actually have two pet peeves. I don't understand why so many illustrators like to do dot eyes on their characters." And of course, so many of my characters have dot eyes, right? Like almost all of them have dot eyes. So my heart was sinking while we're sitting here talking at the table. And and then afterwards I had the chance to show him, and I had two books to show him, two stories that I had sketched out. And one of them I thought, he's definitely going to like this book. I'll show it to him. He'll definitely like it. And he looked at it, he read it, and he says, "Well, it's sweet. Do you have anything else?" And I was like, yeah, I have something else, but I got to warn you, it has rhyming text." And he says, yeah, and that's all right. Eyes. Exactly. I was like, yeah. So he's like, "Don't worry about it. You know, it's okay. The rhyming text is not a problem." And then I said, "Yeah, my characters have dot eyes." And he's like, "You know, you're not bowling me over with confidence here. Just show me the story, dot eyes or not." And so he looked at it, and he really liked the story. And we did it as Hush Little Polar Bear, and it stayed as a rhyme, and the characters still have like dot eyes. And the only thing that changed about it from the original sketches was he thought that there needed to be like a human character in here. So I added this girl, and she's sort of reading this this book, right? And it's the same book that you would be reading, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So then anyway, at the end of the book...
Oh, that's awesome. Hush little polar bears, sleep in the snow, dream of the places where sleeping bears go.
Yeah, thanks. I'm actually thinking of making the pig a little bit bigger in there. And I don't want to because I like the way that the pig is. I like the way I painted him in that picture. But part of me feels like he looks bigger in relationship to the dog here. So I might go back and make him bigger in this one. Does that look okay to you? Does it? Well, you know, I have to think about it. I haven't changed it yet. I'm kind of holding out to see how I feel when the whole book is done.
I think he's cuter that way.
Smaller like that? You think he's cuter? Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, well, thanks. You just convinced me. That's a lot less work for me to do. I always enjoyed writing stories when I was a kid, and I have two brothers and two sisters, so I'd always write stories about them. And they'd usually wind up getting eaten by a monster or something at the end of that story. So
was that your fantasy?
Yeah, I love monsters too, you know, so it was pretty important to combine the two. So I was always illustrating these stories too. And then I got into middle school, I think, and that's when I noticed that the kids were actually asking me to illustrate pictures for them or illustrate stories for them that they had written. And I hadn't really considered that they'd pay me to do that until I got into high school.